How's it going, everyone? October 19th edition of Octagon Outlook. I am your host, James Lynch. Thanks so much for joining me here on a Monday. As we usually do every week, we have a guest co-host, and I've got one of the, dare I say, one of the most underrated analysts in the game right now. I've been using this guy forever, and he's a great interview. Also a big hockey fan. We'll definitely get some hockey talk in here. Of course, I'm talking about Brian Boom Kelleher joining me here on the program. Brian, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, man. How's everything? Can't wait to talk some MMA, some hockey with you.
Yes, perfect combo. That's a perfect world in my scenario, but we got a lot to talk about. We'll get into UFC 254 in a second, but we got to recap UFC Fight Island 6. Before we do that, though, hit that subscribe button on the channel. Make sure you hit that like button, and also you can find all of my big interviews. I just interviewed Neil Magny last week. A lot of really interesting stuff going on in MMA. Definitely don't want to miss that here on the channel, so wanted to get that right off the top. But let's talk about Fight Island 6. We have an upset in the main event. I was shocked by this outcome, Brian. I wanted to get your take on this. Brian Ortega gets a decision on Chen Seung-Jung, the Korean Zombie. But to me, what was so impressive about this victory was that Ortega beat Zombie at his own game. I mean, I figured if Ortega was going to win this one, he'd get him to the ground, maybe submit him, but he outboxed the Korean Zombie. Looks like those 2 years off paid off, taking a little page out of Dominic Cruz's playbook. But your thoughts on the performance, Brian, because I did not expect this outcome.
Oh, yeah, it was unbelievable. And honestly, I think those 2 years off really was a big blessing for Ortega. He came back fresh. His mind was fresh. He changed up his coaches. Seems like he was in a really good place, and it really showed in the fight. I couldn't believe how perfect his performance was. I mean, he fought primarily in the southpaw stance, which I don't remember him always being southpaw. I know he switches a little bit, but just how impressive it was to stay southpaw for so long, to have that crisp jab that he was putting out there. I mean, he's kind of froze Korean Zombie up. He didn't really get any offense off. Ortega was popping him with those shots from the outside the whole time, switching his stances. Didn't even have to really do anything on the ground, which is obviously what we know him for. But he looked sharp, man. I was really impressed.
I was a little surprised, too, to see Zombie a little tentative in the early going. Not, I don't know if it's because he sort of realized what Ortega was doing, like you were mentioning with the stance, but also, we're used to this guy getting like first round finishes like he did over Edgar or Moicano. But that first round, I remember watching that being like, okay, what's going on here? Like, is he waiting for him to counter? Like, were you surprised by that just in the early going? Because he's known as sort of an early finisher, and for him to be a little bit maybe more tentative, maybe that's a respect thing towards Ortega and his skill set. But I found that a little bit surprising in the fight.
Yeah, same with me. I didn't really expect that. I thought he would come out a little bit sharper, a little bit stronger, but I feel like maybe, he wanted to be patient and, he was taking his time trying to find his range and figure out Ortega. But I think, it was really, all Ortega. I think he was surprised by the way he was fighting and how he switched up his stance and how he utilized his boxing. And maybe he was a little bit weary of the takedown, didn't want to go to the ground with him. But it was a really a surprising slow start for the Zombie.
And the implications of this are huge. I think people just assumed Zombie was going to win. He'd get the title shot against Volkanovski. To me, Ortega's done enough to get this title shot. If this was a close fight where you had to really, sort of look at every round and figure out who won, then I'd say, yeah, maybe don't give the title shot. But Ortega was dominant in this fight. Zombie didn't win a single round, at least on my scorecards. I think this has got to be next. If not, if you really wanted to be generous here, maybe you do the Holloway rematch just because that was so one-sided. But I think Ortega's got the shot against Volkanovski. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I was thinking about Holloway, right? That fight versus Holloway, just a completely different fighter. Usually with a fight like that, you never want to see that rematch ever again. You're like, man, you took too much of a beating. You got outclassed. But now to see the rejuvenated Ortega with all the changes with his coaches and his style and his mindset, it's almost like I'm actually really excited to see how he would look against Holloway again. So you could go that way, but I agree with you. I think he's, it's definitely valid that he gets the next title shot against Volkanovski. I think that's a new, fresh matchup, something that Volkanovski would be excited for as well. I think he wants something new and kind of deserves that, with having beat Max twice, even though there's a little bit of controversy. But I would love to see that fight as well.
Yeah, I think you can't go wrong there. As far as a Zombie's next fight, I mean, obviously not a great performance, but I don't think you can go wrong. I think there's a lot of fighters in that division who need like a Zombie type fight, whether it's Zabit Magomedsharipov, Yair Rodriguez, even Calvin Kattar right now doesn't have anyone to fight. He's beat everyone but Zabit and obviously lost to Moicano, who's no longer in the division. But I think any of those, you mix them up, you put them here or there. I don't think you can go wrong with Zombie's next fight. Unfortunately, the problem with him is that he's taken so much damage in his career that a loss like this really does set him back. But curious to see who he ends up fighting next in terms of the matchmaking. Let's talk about the co-main event. Huge fight for the women's flyweight division, and a fight that I did not see going this way. Jessica Andrade getting the first round finish. It's a KO hook to the body. It was weird when I was watching it live. Like, it looked like did Chukagian, like how did she get hurt? It looked like she might have like hurt her rib from doing something, but it was the punch. It just happened so fast. You didn't see it on that first camera angle, but it was one of those things where, Chukagian was grimacing. She was done. I mean, there was no way she was coming back. She immediately grabbed her stomach. Kudos to Andrade. Again, this is one of the heaviest hitters, not just at 115 now, but we've seen at 125 as well. We'll talk about the implications of this in a second, but what did you think of Andrade getting the win?
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I was kind of under the same, impression with Chukagian. I thought her length and her reach was going to play a big factor, but I kind of knew she had to fight the perfect fight. She had to stay on the outside for the whole entire fight. Every second, she had to be sharp. If you let Andrade get inside on you with those heavy hooks and she catches you with anything, her power is unparalleled in either weight class. Coming up from 125, still carries that power over, dangerous. And as soon as she gets inside, you could almost see it, like there's fear, in these other girls, like, wow, I can't get hit by her. But I thought Chukagian did a good job with grappling and digging for underhooks and kind of getting off the fence. But then, once Andrade landed that body shot, she pounced on her. She landed another body shot and just put her away.
And like I said, I'll talk a little bit later after we finish recapping this card about what I think the should be next for Andrade in terms of the title implications, because there is a lot at stake here. Chukagian ranked very high. And by the way, Brian, only the second time Chukagian's been finished in her career. The only other time she was finished was against Valentina Shevchenko. So very durable. So for Andrade to get that win, very impressive as well. Speaking of impressive, how about Jimmy Croot here? I thought this fight, I talked about this last week, I thought the odds were a little bit off on his fight against Modestas Bukauskas, but clearly they weren't. Croot goes out there, gets the first round finish over a really tough guy in Bukauskas. This is not a guy who had easy fights either coming into the UFC. We're talking about a former Cage Warriors light heavyweight champion. So for Croot to go out there and finish him in the first round in a fight that I think they set up to figure out who the better prospect is, clearly it's Jimmy Croot at this point in his career. What did you think of this finish? Because it was just a beautiful knockout.
I mean, that was clean, as quick as you could want in a fight like that. And, Bukauskas is definitely a up-and-coming guy that has a lot of hype behind him. But I knew Croot had more experience in the cage, in the UFC. And that kind of showed, he's a fearless guy. He's a guy that's willing to go in there and just let go and go for something big early on. And I think that's dangerous. A lot of guys like to fight patient, kind of start slow and figure things out. And with Croot, he just gets in there and just lets it go, and he has no fear. So I think that's kind of what gave him that win. Bukauskas kind of wanted to feel it a little bit, and Croot just came out slinging heavy hands and caught him early and put him away.
Yeah, and I think at this point, Croot's got to get these bigger fights. I mean, he had that test last year against Misha Serkinov. It did not go as well, but that's the type of fight he should have next, whether it's like an OSP or some sort of vet in the division, to really see where this guy can go, because we forget how young he is. I want to say he's 24. I'm going to look up right now so the trolls don't come out. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. Like, this is a young guy. Like, when was the last time we had like a really like a promising light heavyweight prospect, other than maybe like a Johnny Walker? But even then, he wasn't this young. He is 24 years old. So Jimmy Croot, a lot of potential there. Modestas Bukauskas, not a bad loss. Second fight in the UFC. He'll be back. Sometimes these losses for fighters are good earlier in their career, where they can kind of readjust and, make some of those changes that they might have not had they gone on a winning streak. So I think it's a win-win there. How about former Octagon Outlook co-host James Krause getting a win over Claudio Silva? You know what I love about James Krause is that he definitely knows how to pick his fights right. And, this was a short notice fight for him at 170. I think he knew this was a good opportunity for him to pick up a win. Not a flashy name, not a flashy opponent, but a guy with a good record at 14-2. Krause looked awesome in this fight. What were your thoughts on his performance?
Yeah, Krause is always game, man. And I always respect the guy, too, because I know he has that coaching role back at his gym. He has so many fighters that he has to look after, and he speaks about that. And to come in and to beat a guy that's only lost once and a dangerous guy, it's very impressive, especially not with a full camp or anything like that on Fight Island, dealing with sleep schedule changes and all those things that he has to face. He's just a veteran, he's great at switching stances, a highly technical fighter, and he's got a great coach in Mark Montoya as well. I think those two have a great dynamic, and that shows in the fights.
And it was a great night for Factory X, because our next fight, Jonathan Martinez, another short notice opportunity, stepping in there for Alejandro Perez, getting the decision win over Thomas Almeida. I thought this was one of Jonathan Martinez's best fights of his career. I thought he looked great. Didn't have to worry about missing weight, because this was at 145 for this one. But I just credit Martinez for, taking advantage of this opportunity where you've got a guy in Almeida, a lot of name value, fought a lot of really good opponents, including, one guy that might be sitting here next to me here. But, in terms of what Almeida's been able to to do in his career. Just to get a win for Martinez. This was like the biggest win of Martinez's career, and he caught him at a good time where Almeida, is a guy that's, fought the who's who in the Octagon. So I think this was a really smart move for Martinez to, continue his propel up the bantamweight division. This is your division. I know it was at 145, but what did you think of these two duking it out?
Yeah, Martinez gets better every single fight out to me. I feel like his technical skills are just really high level, and I think this was a great test for him, and he hit it at perfect timing with Almeida being out for quite some time. Having to come back and fight in these circumstances is probably different and difficult, and I think Martinez being more active as of late played a role. He's definitely a big bantamweight, so that was another factor that helped him, I think, not having to cut the weight all the way. And he packs power as well. You can see he rocked Almeida a couple of times in that fight. His kickboxing is really good, and Almeida's not the type of guy to really shoot in and try to enforce wrestling, so it became a stand-up fight, and Martinez just was a little bit more highly technical and edged him out there, and it was a really good performance for him. What a quiet guy, right? He doesn't really want to say anything after, so he's got an interesting personality, but he definitely has really good fighting skills.
And my bad, you never fought Almeida. You fought John Lineker. That's what I was thinking of. For some reason, I don't know why they don't look anything alike, but it's Monday, yeah, and they're Brazilian. There you go. We're gonna just zoom through the prelims here quickly. Not a lot to talk about too much. That Guram and Gamrot fight. I thought Guram won. I thought it was a great performance. Gamrot's this guy who's like seemingly unbeatable, but this was a good fight, and I don't think there was a loser in this one. I thought this was a good performance from both. So I thought Guram won the fight. No issues with that. Jillian Robertson looked very dominant in her win. She's another, dare I say, dark horse of that flyweight division. Still pretty young, I think 25 years old, really racking up some good wins here. I think it was one of the first decisions she's had in the Octagon. She usually wins by submission, so I thought that was good. How about Jung Park replicating, a dominant performance like Chimaev against John Phillips as well. John Phillips losing again. This guy is just the guy they put in front to build up the other guy, it seems. So really impressive win there. How about Ziam getting the win over Malarkey? That was good. Grisham's knockout was certainly impressive, although expected. Antigulov, not exactly a world beater by any means. And of course, opening up the card, what a win that was for Nurmagomedov, opening things up. That left hook and the ground and pound after that. That was pretty vicious. Really big win there for Sad Nurmagomedov in your division as well. Boom. Anything stand out to you on the prelims before we move on here?
Yeah, Jillian Robertson, I'm just really impressed with her. I feel like she has this ground game that's, hard to deal with. Very technical. She utilizes ground and pound really well, and girls aren't able to move underneath her and recover guard and get back to a good position or get up to their feet. And, that was another black belt that she was facing. So that was even more impressive to see that. She just became a black belt. So just to run through, who's the girl she fought? I'm sorry. Her name.
It was Poliana Botella.
Batella, yeah, just to run through Batella, another black belt like that on the ground was just really impressive, and she's going to be something to deal with because she's got pretty good striking, but she's able to grab a hold of your leg and take you down, and then it's like it's all her world from there on out. So really impressed with her.
Really good card overall. I did reference that fight between Jessica Andrade and Caitlin Chukagian, the title implications that are involved there. I'm going to do a quick rant here. I already see people saying Andrade versus the winner of Mayan Shevchenko, but I want to remind people we got a fight this week with Lauren Murphy. It was supposed to be Lauren Murphy and Cynthia Calvillo. Lauren Murphy now fighting a newcomer. We'll break that down in a second here, but the UFC shouldn't automatically give Andrade a title shot here. Look, it was impressive to finish Chukagian, and don't get me wrong, I was a fan of that finish. I thought it was a great performance from her, but she's only got one fight in the division right now. When Cynthia Calvillo got a dominant win over Jessica Ai, she did not get a title shot immediately off that. So why would Andrade here? I realize Andrade got a finish here, but I think we got to wait to see how Murphy looks here this Saturday first and figure out who of the two look the best. If Murphy has a bad performance, fair enough, give it to Andrade, but we got to start rewarding fighters who are winning fights in their weight class. It reminds me a bit of when Cody Garbrandt was given a title shot with 0 wins at flyweight automatically just because he was a former bantamweight champion, meanwhile ignoring that he had lost 3 of his last 4 fights. So I don't like this idea of I don't mind fighters leapfrogging from division to division, but when we're talking about title shots, we shouldn't just automatically give it to someone who has a little bit of clout in one division and automatically propel them up that way. I say let's wait to see what happens with Lauren Murphy this Saturday. If she wins and she wins impressively, I think Murphy should get the title shot. Let Andrade fight Cynthia Calvillo. Otherwise, if Murphy loses or doesn't look great, then you could do that. But let's not rush already to give Andrade that title shot. What are your thoughts on that, Boom?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think the UFC sometimes will do that. They'll kind of wait it out a little bit, kind of like the Sanhagen Marias thing. I think they were kind of trying to wait it out and see what happens there before they pull the trigger on the next move. And I agree. I think, to just kind of slingshot people to the straight to the title shot when they haven't done enough work in that division and really earn their spot, it just kind of puts a bad precedent out there. So I think to just see what Lauren Murphy could do. She's on a winning streak. She's doing really well for herself right now at this weight class. Let's see what she has to offer, and then we'll make a decision after that.
All right, let's get to UFC 254. This is a 6-fight main card, which is something we don't see too often. But we'll start actually on the prelims because we do have you on here, Brian. There's a pretty big bantamweight fight on the prelims. It's not at bantamweight, though. It's actually at a catchweight of 140. I believe that was on Nathaniel Wood's end because of, I think, like making weight or something. So, yeah, we got Casey Kenny, Nathaniel Wood. Huge fight on the prelims. If you go to blitzbet.eu, I forgot to plug that earlier, but if you're in Canada, you can definitely use this. Great odds. And of course, that's what we're going to be referencing here today. And looking at Kenny and Woods, Casey Kenny right now on blitzbet.eu, minus 192 favorite, Nathaniel Wood plus 157. I think the odds make sense. I mean, Kenny got a pretty dominant win a couple weeks ago, a quick turnaround here. Interesting thing with Casey Kenny in this fight is that rather than just staying on Yas Island, he ended up coming home for, I think, 10 days back to Arizona. So he wanted to get a bit of a camp in back home, but you do wonder if that travel time is going to affect him. I mean, it's not a quick flight from Abu Dhabi back to the States. So that is one thing to consider in this one. With the fact it's a catch weight, I think that's better for Kenny actually because of the fact he's not going to have to cut that extra weight. I know he used to fight at flyweight, but still having to cut that much weight with doing that much traveling can be a bit of an impact there. And Nathaniel Wood, of course, rebounding in his last fight, getting the win over John Castaneda, newcomer. So both guys really looking to make their stamp in this division. Kind of another prospect versus prospect fight here. I give the edge to Kenny. Just from what he did in his last fight, I think we're seeing not only, he's not just being a wrestler now, we're seeing some good stand-up as well. I think the pressure is going to be there. And with Wood, it's really either he's going to submit you or he ends up, losing, which isn't too often. Wood's only got, 4 losses. But I think just the activity of Kenny, I think is going to be too much here. But I got to get your pick, Boom, because this is in your division.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with Kenny in that last fight. I mean, to be able to even just throw that amount of kicks during a fight is definitely tiring. Punches are one thing, like throwing kicks are it takes a little bit more effort. And just how many kicks he was landing over and over to that guy's body, and to keep that mental focus where you think you're going to put a guy away, but he stays in there for the 3 rounds and you just keep on firing away, trying to finish him. Really impressed with Kenny. And I think this fight is fairly evenly matched on the feet. I think striking, I don't know who to lean towards, but as far as submissions go, I lean towards Wood. The only thing is, I think Kenny has a really good wrestling background. He's going to be really hard for Wood to take down and kind of hold down there and get a submission. So I feel like volume-wise, Kenny will start to take over as the fight goes on with just letting go of those kicks and just having more output as far as striking goes, and will probably take a decision.
So that's on the prelims. There's obviously more prelims to get to, but we want to give a lot of love to the main card here. We got so much to get into. We're going to start with the first fight on the main card. I almost feel bad talking about this one because this might get canceled again. It's just like the cursed fight. But we've got Magomed Ankalaev taking on Ion Cutelaba for the, I believe, 4th time now. They've had so many issues with, COVID and everything else. If you look on blitzbet.eu right now and you look at Magomed Ankalaev, he is the favorite at minus 286. Cutelaba plus 220. I've broken this fight down before, but I'll get your take first on this one, Boom, in terms of who you think is going to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ankalaev. He's only lost once. I believe he's on like a 3-fight win streak. Cutelaba's fought more times in the UFC, more experience, but I just see, he's able to be finished a little bit better. There was that controversy before. You can't really look back and go off of that fight. But I think Ankalaev just only losing one time. They both pack a lot of power. Someone's going to get hit and get hurt. And I just have Ankalaev by TKO stoppage.
I'm going the same way here. This reminds me a bit of the Joseph Benavidez and Davison Figueiredo first fight, where it was a bit controversial. Aside from Figueiredo missing weight, there was a talk of the head clash. But I think even before that, Figueiredo looked in control of that fight. We saw that play out in the rematch where Davison clearly won. It was a dominant performance. I think the same thing happens here with Ankalaev. I don't think that first fight was a fluke or anything like that. I think he is that much better. And Cutelaba has just been so inconsistent in his career. If you look at 3 of his 4 losses, they've come by stoppage. Ankalaev is the guy who stopped stops most of his opponents. So I think that's a recipe for disaster. Now, are we going to see a first round finish? Maybe not. Maybe these guys waited out a little bit more, but I do see Ankalaev eventually finishing Ion Cutelaba in this fight. I'm going to go second round knockout in this one, but I think Ankalaev is just the better fighter. And I'm taking him in this fight. Okay, let's get to the Lauren Murphy fight I was referencing before. Like I said, it was supposed to be Lauren Murphy and Cynthia Calvillo. She's now taking on a newcomer in Lilia Shakarova. Sounds like a hockey last name or something. Pretty cool there. But I don't know a ton about her. I do see on blitzbet.eu that Murphy's about a 2-1 favorite. So minus 250 for Lauren Murphy. Lilia Shakarova plus 200. Usually in situations like this, I'll sort of look at the fighter and who they fought and everything else. We don't have an age listed. I think height and reach wise, they're pretty similar, her and Murphy. She's coming off a win over a girl who was 1-1 in her last fight. This is one of the things that does scare me a bit, and we do see this every now and then, where the UFC will bring someone in on short notice, and just the level of competition is not great. So she beat a girl who was 1-1, beat another girl who was 2-1, beat a girl who was 5-0. I'll give her that one. Lost to a girl who was 4-4. Beat a girl who was 10-4, and then so on and so on. So, Murphy's just fought way better competition. I mean, it's not even close. And let's not even forget about the Ultimate Fighter. Murphy fought at bantamweight as well before this. So she's been in there with some of the best fighters in both divisions. And, I think she's really turned a corner. I think her leaving the MMA lab, going and training in Texas, going back to her roots with a more specialized camp has really paid off for her. And we saw that in her last fight over Roxanne Modafferi, where I thought she put on a really dominant performance. And then she had the win over Andrea Lee before that. Murphy's someone who's really putting it together at the right time. The one area that does kind of scare you a little bit is that obviously Murphy's getting up there in age. She's about 37 years old. Not supposed to talk about a woman's age, but we're breaking down fights here. We're not trying to be politically correct, but I'm going to take Lauren Murphy in this fight. How could you not, with the experience and the fact that a title shot's on the line here? The question I have in this one is, can she finish this girl? I think she's going to really try and go for that finish. A lot of her fights do go the distance. And I think if you want a title shot, and I think in the back of her head, she knows Andrade got that finish, I think Murphy might go out there and end up getting the finish here. But again, I don't know a ton about her opponent. But when you got someone making their debut and doesn't have a lot of fights, like we're talking, she's got 9 fights. That's a huge disadvantage. So I'm going to go Lauren Murphy by stoppage in this one. I think she gets it done and looks great in this performance. Boom, your pick on this one.
Yeah, I think right now Lauren Murphy's hot. You know what I mean? She's on a win streak, and I know she's older, like you said, with the age. But in this game, sometimes people are late bloomers, and they hit their prime later in life in their athletic career. Maybe that's the case for her. It seems like that for sure, the way she's winning these fights as of late. Moving up weight classes has helped her. That last win against Roxanne Modafferi, who had beat Macy Barber, who's such a hot prospect, like that was really impressive too. So, I think UFC jitters could be a factor for the newcomer here, and you got to be all over her early on. If I'm Lauren Murphy trying to get a title shot, you got to get a finish, and I think she's going to come in there and make a statement. Kind of hard to pick a finish, so I will go decision for Lauren Murphy. So that's my pick.
Yeah, I think more likely Murphy gets a decision here, just because that's what we've seen in most of her fights. But I was just kind of wishful thinking here. Maybe because the title shot's on the line, maybe she tries to get the finish, but we'll see what happens there. Let's go to the middleweight division. Kind of a weird fight here. We've got Phil Haas finally making his UFC debut. If you guys have been following Phil Haas' career, he's had a couple opportunities to get to that next level. It never panned out. He was knocked out by Julian Marquez on Contender Series, ended up fighting in World Series of Fighting, lost there, but has since been on a nice winning streak, including his second stint on Contender Series, where he did get a win in that one. Now he's making his debut against this guy named Jacob Malkoun, who's a teammate I've heard of Robert Whitaker's. I think that's why he got the plug on here. But here's the issue I have about this fight, Boom. Malkoun's only got 4 fights. Why are we signing fighters with that little experience? That drives me nuts when you've got other guys in the regional scene. And I know this is in Abu Dhabi, and I know that, sometimes they need to get guys filled in for these fights, but it's just a bad look when a 4-0 fighter is getting a shot in the UFC. Not a fan of that, but let's talk about the odds here. Blitzbet.eu. We've got Phil Haas coming in here at minus 278, Jacob Malkoun coming in at plus 215. I mean, I got to go Haas here just for the simple fact that here's a guy who overcame adversity early in his career. And those losses, by the way, weren't bad. He fought in the Ultimate Fighter against Andrew Sanchez, lost the decision there. Sanchez, one of the best wrestlers on that show. Lost to Lewis Taylor, who ended up winning the PFL tournament, so not a bad loss there. And then losing to Julian Marquez, again, that forced him to make some changes. He's now in a 4-fight win streak heading into this fight. He's training at Sanford MMA, which is one of the best camps out there right now. So I like that move as well. And I think Haas goes out there and finishes this fight. I have to go with him here just based off experience. Which way are you leaning on this one, Boom?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Haas as well, especially like you said with the redemption to get to that dream where you want to get into the UFC and to face defeat by knockout, and then to get redemption and get another chance on the Contender Series and win by knockout and finally get your UFC debut after that. I think this guy's going to want to make a statement after going through that and finally getting here. Fighting a guy that only has 4 fights, like you said, that experience is going to play a factor. And also, Haas has fought way better competition, a lot guys that have been in and out of the UFC and have fought tougher guys as well. So with all that said, I got to go Haas. I think he's going to get the finish as well, TKO stoppage.
Let's move along. A fight that I think is flying under the radar here just because of how stacked this card is. We've got Alexander Volkov taking on Walt Harris at heavyweight. 2 fighters coming off losses, looking to get back on that winning track. And right now on blitzbet.eu, we've got Alexander Volkov as a slight favorite at -161, the comeback on Walt Harris +130. I might be crazy here, and I'll get your thoughts on this after I give you my pick, but I think this should be a little bit wider for Alexander Volkov. Here's a guy who has just way more experience, fought sort of the who's who, and he's very tough to finish. I know Walt Harris, a lot of times his wins do end early where he's going to go out there, blitz you, get the finish. But Volkov's been finished by one heavyweight in the UFC, and that was Derek Lewis. And that was sort of a last minute. I mean, that's the equivalent of like a Hail Mary in football where literally Lewis just knocks him out with a minute to go. Volkov is on his way to winning a decision in that fight. And we saw in Volkov's last fight how tough he is to finish, as Curtis Blades several times tried to finish that fight, but Volkov just too much for him. Blades ends up getting a decision, and Volkov ends up losing the fight. But I don't think you're going to see Harris try and, wrestle on Alexander Volkov. I think you're going to see him try and take his head off. And I think that's a bad game plan because Volkov, very good striker. You look at his losses, they're mainly to guys that are pretty high level, including, Minikov and, Blades, who's very high level. I mean, the Czech Congo and Tony Johnson's fights, we can kind of erase those. But in general, this is a guy that gets it done. And like I said, just 2 losses in the UFC to Blades and Lewis. Those are 2 of the top guys. He's got a stoppage win over Verdum. He's got a stoppage win over Stefan Struve. I really like Volkov here. And I think with Harris, I think you're going to see a lot of people, sort of rooting for him because of what happened in his last fight and obviously what happened outside the cage with the unfortunate passing of his daughter and all that. So, I think Volkov should be more of like a 2-1 to 3-1 favorite in this fight. I just think he's a lot better than Walt Harris is in this fight. I don't think Harris is going to go out there and finish him. And I think Volkov is probably going to end up winning a decision here. So curious to get your thoughts on this one, Boom, because I think Volkov clearly wins this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think with Volkov, with the length and the reach, a lot of guys have that length and reach and they don't know how to utilize it. But with Volkov, he's very good with utilizing that length, throws good front snap kicks, leg kicks. He sticks his jab out there, keeps you at the end of his punches. And to beat a guy like that, who's a very seasoned striker, you kind of have to make up the wrestling and take him down and tire him out and avoid those strikes. So, with Walt Harris, I do think he's probably the better athlete, but I don't think he has that wrestling pedigree where he's going to be able to get inside and kind of rough him up and take him down and tire him out like that. So I got Volkov as well. I think he'll pick him apart on the feet and eventually get a TKO stoppage later in the rounds.
Let's get to the co-main event. This fight is awesome. Could easily headline any card, but I'm happy to see it here on the pay-per-view on this stack card. We've got Robert Whittaker, the former middleweight champion, taking on Jared Cannonier. Now, this fight was supposed to take place earlier this year. Whittaker ended up withdrawing, and then, of course, Cannonier ended up getting that pec injury. So now we finally have this fight come to fruition now. And if you go on blitzbet.eu, Jared Cannonier, a slight favorite at -114, Robert Whittaker -108. This, to me, is the toughest fight to pick on the card because we've seen what Cannonier can do. This last fight, which albeit was a year ago, more than a year ago, when he knocked out Jack Hermanson. I mean, that to me was like, I remember thinking, Jack's got this. He's going to go and get the title shot, and then Cannonier spoiled all those plans, knocked him out. So we know Cannonier's got some sick knockout power. With Whittaker, though, I mean, if this fight had taken place prior to Rob not fighting Darren Till, I probably would be picking Cannonier here. But I was so impressed with Whittaker's win over Darren Till, and a guy that, we know how talented, like Till's got weaknesses. His ground game's not great. His wrestling's not great. But for Robert Whittaker to stand toe-to-toe with Darren Till and play his game and beat him at his own game, I thought was so impressive. Not just that, but Till hit Whittaker with some good shots, and Whittaker stood there. There was I remember that narrative heading into the fight where Till's going to knock out Whittaker in the first round. Adesanya knocked him out. Whittaker's chin's gone. He's too old, all this stuff, or maybe not old in terms of age, but in terms of fight experience. And that didn't happen. Whittaker got a decision over Darren Till. And I was super impressed by that fight. And I think, the thing you got to look at with this matchup is just the experience as well, where Whitaker's been the champ. He's fought tough guys like Yoel Romero and still come out on top. He's, for the most part, he hasn't been finished. The only guy to finish him at middleweight is Israel Adesanya. So if Cannonier can't go out there and knock him out, I think this could be Whitaker's fight to lose as far as I'm concerned. And I just think, with Cannonier, his only good win right now is Hermanson. Right? Like in terms of the middleweight division, he's got a win over David Branch, who's not in the UFC, the win over Anderson, which, Anderson's not what he used to be. I think Whitaker sort of has that edge and experience in terms of looking at this matchup. Now, could Cannonier go out there and finish him? Maybe. I mean, I don't think Whitaker's fought a guy, at least recently, that has that sort of knockout power, other than maybe, like an Adesanya or a Yoel Romero. But I think Cannonier kind of brings something a little bit different to the table. So how I'm going on this is this. I'm going to pick Whitaker, but I think Whitaker wins a decision. I don't think he, with this only being 3 rounds and the fact that Cannonier, like I said, undefeated at middleweight, I think Whitaker most likely goes out there, gets the better of the strikes, and ends up getting a decision in this one. And I was actually looking at the props for this. I think if you take this fight, goes the distance, it's actually plus money. And I think that's entirely possible. Like I could see Cannonier getting a decision. I could see Whitaker getting a decision. But I think in general, you just know how durable Whitaker is. And like I said, outside of losing to Adesanya by stoppage, I think Wonderboy did beat him at welterweight. For the most part, you look at Whitaker's resume and who he's fought, he hasn't gotten finished in those fights. And those are against guys like Yoel Romero and, Uriah Hall and guys that do have that knockout power. So that makes me think this fight will go the distance. By the way, when was the last time Whitaker had a 3-round fight? It's been forever. So I think that's another advantage for him as well, is that he has that extra experience. So to kind of summarize this up, I'm taking Whitaker by decision. If Cannonier wins, I don't think it'll be by knockout. I think it will also be by decision. So I think, like I said, the odds are pretty close. You could do that, fight goes the distance prop, but I don't see a finish here. What are your thoughts on this? Because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the opposite, thinking someone's going to sleep here. What are your thoughts, Boom?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. I'm really impressed with Whitaker, his ability to get his mind game back. He said he was burnt out, and that's a real thing, going into the gym and just not really enjoying yourself anymore and kind of feeling like feeling heavy, lethargic, like you don't want to be there and not understanding that. But this is what you do. And he went into that Adesanya fight, no excuses. Obviously, Adesanya is one of the best in the world. The guy's a tactician on the feet, and he got finished there. But like he said, that's the only guy he's been finished by. And there's nothing to be ashamed of with that. And with what's his name? Sorry, guys.
Whitaker Cannonier.
Cannonier. Yeah,
no.
Cannonier. He's got this aura about him at middleweight where I feel like he's very dangerous. He's got that power, but Whitaker's faced guys with power before, like Romero, and he's dealt with it, and he's able to stay in there. He does have a kind of a karate style of striking, more of a point style of striking. He can finish guys too, but I feel like his ability to move in and out is going to be a problem for Cannonier in this fight, who's probably looking for that power shot, maybe even looking to grapple a little bit. He's shown to have some very dangerous ground and pound as well if he does get you to the ground. But Whitaker is not an easy guy to take down to the ground and hold down, so I don't see that happening. I see it taking place on the feet. And Whitaker is just going to be a little bit more elusive, touch him up a little bit more, and I can see it going to decision as well. I think he's going to fight a smart fight and take it the distance.
And one thing I want to mention, because on paper, you kind of don't think about this just because Whitaker's been fighting so much longer. Jared Cannonier's 36 years old. Whitaker's only 29. I think we forget how much older Cannonier is in this fight. So that's another thing with the layoff. Like I said, his last fight against Jack Hermanson was back in September 28th, 2019, whereas Whitaker at least fought this year. So that's another thing to consider when picking this fight. But like I said, toughest fight to pick on the card. If Cannonier ends up winning this, I don't want to hear any crap, because I'm going to tell you guys it's a close fight. It could go either way as far as the matchup goes. All right, let's get to the main event. One of the best fights of all time. One of the best fights this year. I can't wait for this one. Khabib Nurmagomedov, Justin Gaethje. Lightweight title unification bout. Khabib being the champ, Gaethje being the interim champ. Right now on blitzbet.eu, Khabib about a 3-1, almost 4-1 favorite here. Minus 345 for Khabib Nurmagomedov. Justin Gaethje plus 270. So this is how I'm going to make this very simple for everyone to kind of break it down, and I'll get Boom's thoughts on this too. So what this really comes down to is how good is Justin Gaethje's wrestling. Like, we know he's an NCAA Division I wrestler. We know he started as a wrestler. If you listen to Gaethje on Joe Rogan's podcast a couple months back, he was talking about how he didn't even know how to throw a punch. When he came in to work with Trevor Whitman, he had no striking experience, which is crazy to think for the amount of highlight reel finishes this guy's had over his career with the striking, and the fact that that's such a primary focus of his game. Meanwhile, he's a wrestler. That's where he started. So the question in this fight is, can Khabib take Justin Gaethje down? It's entirely possible. But if he can't and it stays standing, things are going to get very interesting. Now, look, Khabib Nurmagomedov's stand-up has improved over the last couple of years. We saw him in the Conor fight go toe-to-toe with Conor, who's a devastating knockout artist, and Khabib actually ended up dropping him in that fight. So I think we've seen sort of the evolution in that. There's some external factors in this fight as well. We know obviously the tragic news of Nurmagomedov's father passing away. So is that going to impact him in the fight? Some fighters, look at other sports. Brett Favre has the best game of his life when his father passes away on Monday Night Football. Khabib, could it be the same thing, or could it end up hurting him? Remember Jake Shields when he fought Jake Ellenberger, his father passed away. Jake Ellenberger went out there and finished him in the first round, and Jake Shields has never been finished like that other than recently against Ray Cooper. But you get what I'm saying. Tragedy can affect people in different ways. The other thing is Nurmagomedov, long layoff, hasn't fought since the Poirier fight last year. Is that going to be an impact? I mean, we didn't seem to be the case in that Poirier fight because, of course, he fought Conor about a year before that. But is that going to play a role? And then the other thing, obviously, not getting to work at American Kickboxing Academies, made his camp back home. Will that play a role as well? Whereas Gaethje already fought this year, is at his regular team. He's getting his regular training partners. So that's something to consider in this fight as well. So my pick, and I'll get Boom's breakdown on this too, I got to go Khabib, only because we know what he's capable of in the cage with his grappling and his wrestling, whereas Gaethje, we have no idea. That's too much of a gamble for me to take. The odds, I think they're a little off, to be honest. I think people got to give more respect to Gaethje's win over Tony Ferguson in his last fight, which, by the way, was a dominant performance. And Gaethje was an underdog in that fight, Brian. I don't know if you remember. A lot of people felt like Ferguson was going to go out there and handle him, and Gaethje did the opposite. And one other thing I'll point out with Gaethje is that this whole narrative of people saying, well, he's reckless, those fights he had against Poirier and Alvarez were years ago. That Gaethje is not the same fighter. We've seen a new, more patient Gaethje where he's picking his shots and he's getting the wins the way he's supposed to. So the pick is going to be Nurmagomedov. Does it go the distance? It's possible. I think more likely it's going to be maybe a 4th or 5th round, maybe submission or potentially TKO ground and pound type thing. But don't count out Gaethje in this fight. I think of all the opponents that Nurmagomedov's had, he's never fought a guy that started as a strictly NCAA Division I wrestler. So that's where things are going to get interesting here. But I got to get your breakdown in this, man, because this is such a huge fight.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this fight too, especially with being, Gaethje having evolved so much as of late and changed up his style to just want to be a champion, not just be the most exciting fighter in the world, but to want to really win fights tactically and be a champion. And him and Trevor Whitman's dynamic is amazing. You see them, student coach, they're vibing, they're always on the same page. Gaethje's mindset is something that every single fighter wants to have, to really go in there and enjoy the chaos, to really want to be in there, and to have that mentality is hard. A lot of times guys the nerves get to them and it takes over them and they go into the fight and they're not feeling like their full potential self. So with Gaethje, you can always count on that guy going in there and leaving all of his potential out there. And I think getting back to his wrestling roots, I seen in the Countdown show, which was really exciting to see. The question to me is Khabib going to be able to hold Gaethje down? He might take him down a couple of times, but Gaethje might scramble up to his feet, and then we're going to see a whole different fight where now Khabib's faced adversity. He wasn't able to hold someone in position and kind of rain down ground and pound and keep him there and wrist trap and all that stuff. I'm really excited to see after the first couple of takedowns, what happens. Does Gaethje start to fold and get stuck down there, or is he scrambling and panicking and getting out and then leg kicking Khabib and chewing him up and making him face adversity himself? That's what I really want to see in this fight. And Khabib, having done every single person he's fought, they know exactly what he's going to do, what he wants to do, and he still does it. I mean, that's so impressive, at this high level in the game, to be able to do that to every single person you fight. That says a lot. He's fought the top guys in the game for years now, and he's done the same exact thing. And Gaethje knows exactly what he wants to do. And if we see him do it again, it's just like, man, nobody can stop this guy. It must be something to feel that, to know, I don't care that this guy knows what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it, and he's not going to stop me. That's Khabib's whole career. So me, I think Gaethje's got the right mindset. He's got the right game plan to try to scramble, to not have his back against the cage, to stay away from that outer layer of the octagon where Khabib kind of traps you and puts you up against the cage and takes you down. I do think we're going to see a lot of takedowns, but I think we're going to see Gaethje kind of create a scramble and make it a lot more difficult for Khabib. But the way I see it is, as the later rounds come, Khabib never stops his persistency on those takedowns no matter what. They're both cardio game is at the top level. I think Khabib's going to be able to get secure some takedowns later on, where we start to see Gaethje fade just a little bit, and he's down there for a little bit longer, and then Khabib's going to catch a submission later on towards the end of the fight. I think like a Kimura or something weird like that, where Gaethje starts to tire out and he catches him. So I see a submission by Khabib in the later rounds.
Wow, I think we agreed on most of our picks here today. I love that. I love that breakdown, though. A lot of things that I didn't even think of in terms of some of the technical stuff. So great analysis there. Boom. We're going to end things on a rant here. We'll not end the show. We got lots of time left, but I want to talk about Justin Gaethje heading into this fight. And look, I get people love Khabib. I get that he has a huge fan base, and I get that this is one of the biggest fights of his career. But I think people got to show Gaethje a little bit more respect. And, I talked about the betting lines there with Khabib being such a big favorite. That's great if you believe in Khabib, but we got to start giving Justin Gaethje some respect. I'm still hearing people saying Justin doesn't have MMA wrestling. We have no idea about that. We don't. We've never seen him use it. I've also heard people like Gaethje hasn't had any good wins. Ferguson was coming off an injury. Enough with this nonsense. This guy has turned things around. He had back-to-back losses earlier in his UFC career. He's turned that around, getting stoppages on everyone he's fought since then. When are we going to give Justin Gaethje some credit here? He didn't just go and take on a guy in Tony Ferguson who's washed up. He fought a Tony Ferguson who was on a 12-fight win streak. And yes, Tony's getting up there in age. And yes, that he's had some setbacks in terms of injuries, but we got to give Gaethje more respect as far as that goes in terms of what he's been able to do in the octagon and to turn things around. Because I'll be honest, Boom, when I was, when I saw Gaethje lose to Poirier, I thought this guy might not ever be a title challenger again. And what he's been able to do since then, getting those finishes, I think really shows that this guy is the real deal. And all I'm saying here is you can love Khabib, but you got to give respect to Justin Gaethje and what he's done in the cage. And these people going out there and saying Khabib's going to knock out Gaethje in the first round or submit him, or it's not even going to be close. Show some respect to Justin Gaethje, man. This guy is exciting. I get that you're a fan of Khabib, but you can be a fan of Khabib and also give Gaethje his respect here. Stop with this narrative of that Khabib's going to go out there and steamroll Gaethje in this fight. Anything can happen in a fight, but I think this idea that it's going to be a one-sided beatdown, I completely disagree with. I think Gaethje will have his moments. Like I said, I'm picking Khabib in this fight, but stop not giving Gaethje his respect. That's all I'm going to say here, because I think Gaethje deserves it at this point. And the reason he's in this position is because of the way he's turned things around since those back-to-back losses. So your thoughts on that? Because it's interesting. Like I still see people say that Khabib's not getting any respect. I'm like, he's been the betting favorite in all of his fights. People are saying he's going to destroy Gaethje. What am I missing here? I mean, other than the fighters I've spoken to, including yourself, a lot of fighters, I'll be honest, are picking Gaethje here. But this idea he's underrated or gets no respect, enough with that. That's all I got to say.
No, I'm honestly a little scared for Khabib in this fight, with his legacy on the line, his undefeated streak on the line. Gaethje's just looking unstoppable. Like the way that he beat Tony Ferguson and the way that he's displaying his patience now to go for the finish. Like he was brutalizing Ferguson. He had him hurt bad and he still stayed patient. Like, no, don't overcommit. Don't pull the trigger too early. This guy's dangerous. Let's wait and find that finish blow, find that shot. And I think that's really impressive from where he's came from, with just being reckless in there and getting in those firefights and just kind of saying whatever, like either you're knocking me out or I'm knocking you out. And then to see him go from that to how he displayed patience in that Ferguson fight is huge. And I think early on, if he could land a couple of leg kicks on Khabib and kind of look in his eyes and be like, hey, this is different the way that I kick guys. And he sees that, he's going to humanize Khabib in there and start to gain confidence. And I think that's key for him early on in that fight. So I'm really interested to see that. I kind of want to see a guy like Khabib get humanized to an extent. We've seen him get caught in fights. We've seen him slightly rocked, but not really. I want to see, Khabib face some real adversity in this fight and see what happens from there on out.
Great breakdown there. Completely agree. We have a bit of time here at the end. We might as well quickly talk about Bellator. I did want to touch on that. I don't know if you caught the card. By the way, Bellator, get your act together with the Canadian broadcast rights. We can't watch it on TV anywhere here. And that's a big miss because there's a lot of fight fans here in Canada. So I had to go and find other ways to watch it. Not going to talk about that on here, but yeah, Chris Cyborg, what a performance that was. I know I co-host a show with her every week, so we'll get that out of the way right on the bat. But you guys have to admit, to go out there and box Arlene Blenko, where that's probably her best chance to win, I thought was so impressive. And for Chris to finish her in the second round, super impressive. Did you see the fight, Boom? And if so, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I saw the fight. I mean, with Chris Cyborg, it seems almost like every time, besides the Nunez fight, like nobody could really deal with her pressure, her power. It seems to phase a lot of these other girls really quick. You see it in their eyes, like this is something different. And yeah, the boxing looked crisp. Her all around MMA game looked good. She mounted her a little bit there. Almost had a couple of chokes. So yeah, and then she got the finish in the end. I was really impressed with her. I think she's going to pretty much stay on top in Bellator. It's going to be hard to find competition that can keep up with her, but excited to see what's next.
Yeah, I'm going to ask her this afternoon. We're doing our show, so hopefully I'll get some insight there. I would hope so. She's my co-host. We'll see what happens there. The other thing I wanted to mention on this card, Leandro Higo. This is going to be the thing that nobody talks about on the weekend, but how about this guy turning his career around? There was a point when he signed with Bellator. He had lost 3 of his last 4 fights, lost to Pico, lost to Caldwell, lost to Eduardo Dantas in his debut. We're talking about a former LFA Bantamweight champ, and now he's got back-to-back wins, got a really nice win over Sean Bunch, and just beat Ricky Bandejas, who I don't know what's going on with Ricky, but ever since that James Gallagher knockout, things have not gone his way. Higo with another big win here. He's a dark horse at bantamweight for them. I know you're probably paying attention to every bantamweight weight class, not just in the UFC, but I thought Higo looked great. And of course, he trains with the Pitbull brothers. A lot of upside here for a guy who's, I think we forget, is just 31 years old.
Yeah, Higo was really impressive. He definitely got redemption. He's faced defeat, and now he looks sharp again. Fighting Ricky Bandejas, who's a top guy in Bellator at bantamweight. I think that fall to Sergio Perez for Bandejas was hard to deal with. I think you finally get to that top competition. You want to see where you belong and where you stack up, and then to fall down is kind of demoralizing sometimes. And then to face a guy in Higo who's really sharp with his striking. He's got great coaching. I know he's trained with Cejudo and those guys over there. So, I think he's well trained, well coached, and he looked really good at bantamweight. I kind of thought in that fight that Higo was going to get the upset win just based off of how Bandejas looked in his last fight, and that's what happened. So, good stuff by Higo.
And just last thing I wanted to mention on Bellator, Steve Mowry, again, staying undefeated at 8-0, might be one of the most underrated heavyweight prospects out there. Sean Teed is a guy who has, a lot of experience, so that was a good win for him. But I think it's now time to see Mowry start facing these guys, that are legit in Bellator in terms of, not that Teed isn't, but Teed's more of a prospect. I want to see him against some of these veterans in Bellator because I think it's time for Mowry. He might be another one of their really good blue chip prospects. I don't know how familiar you are with Steve Mowry, Tall Steve as they call him.
Yeah, not too familiar. I did catch the highlights there, so it was a nice finish by him. But and I think Teed had some good experience as well, so that showed where he is. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with either of those guys.
All right, we're going to get to the questions and we'll wrap things up here. We just have some people in the chat. I'm checking it out right here, right now. We got Alex 98X saying Ortega ready for Volkanovski. I think he gets it done. So sharp on the feet, and Volkan doesn't want that ground smoke, so no wrestling. It is an interesting style matchup, Boom. By the way, it's funny how people are like, yeah, he's going to get smoked. Volkanovski doesn't get smoked by anyone, so let's throw that out there. But I do think it is an intriguing style matchup because, yeah, I don't know if it stays standing who would have the edge there. Volkanovski's look great. Some people felt he didn't win his last fight, but I think in general, you don't just go out there and edge out, 2 wins over Max Holloway. The first one being more dominant. But what do you think of that Ortega-Volkanovski matchup from a style perspective?
I'm fascinated by that matchup. I really want to see this fight, to be honest, just based off of the fact that with Volkanovski, how good Ortega looked in the striking in that zombie fight. And, Volkanovski being a solid wrestler, but nobody wants to go in and shoot on Ortega and deal with those kind of chokes that he has, and his jiu-jitsu is such a high level. So I'm really fascinated to see, where would that fight take place? How would the striking look? I think Eugene Behrman is a brilliant coach. Those guys are really good with game planning. And I think, just scoring points as the fight goes on. They're very good 5-round fighters, all those guys. So, I'd like to see how Volkanovski would deal with the length and reach of Ortega and how he's improved with his striking. And would he even try to wrestle him or take him down? I have a feeling he would just kind of try to push him against the cage and kind of score points that way and not really look to secure takedowns. But the striking would be interesting. I think Ortega might have a little bit of an edge there.
And we'll see if that ends up happening next. I'm way more in favor of that than doing the trilogy fight with Holloway. I think we need to circle back to that one at a later date, not necessarily the next fight. Volkanovski's got to he's got to have his championship reign at some point. We can't just have him tied to Max Holloway all the time. So it would be good if they sort of moved on from there. The other thing I wanted to get to in the chat here, Alex 98X says Jared is so underrated. I got him by KO in the first round. Disagree on both points. How is Cannonier underrated if he's the betting favorite in this fight? People obviously think he's good. That's why they're picking him. And 2, I think there's a very small percentage that he knocks out Whitaker in the first round. Even Adesanya didn't do that. He was close, but he didn't end up doing it. What do you think of those assessments?
And there's no way he's underrated. I mean, even the champion Adesanya is high praise for Cannonier. I think he thinks he's next, so definitely not underrated. Cannonier can pull it off, but stylistically, I do lean towards Whitaker. I just feel like he's just a more seasoned guy. He's been up at the top. He's younger, like we said before, and his striking style is not easy to get in on him and land that power shot. We've seen it against Yoel Romero, and Adesanya is the only guy to do it. So they're completely different strikers. Adesanya is a tactician, and Cannonier is more of a power striker looking for that one shot to put you away. I just don't see it happening, but it is a hard fight for Whitaker, and I'm interested to see how it plays out.
We've had a couple people in the chat. I'm going to kind of just summarize this as one question. They're saying, who's the better boxer, Gaethje or McGregor? I mean, both have power. They're saying McGregor's a little bit more accurate. I tend to agree with that, but it's interesting though, right? Because like Gaethje has that like wrestling like thing in his back pocket where he could kind of, if he wanted to do sort of a, punch takedown type thing, that's something that Gaethje has, whereas McGregor doesn't. McGregor's not known as a wrestler and actually struggled against wrestlers earlier in his career, like with Chad Mendes in that first round of their fight. So what do you think of that debate?
Yeah, I think McGregor has that piston left hand. He definitely has a little bit more precision maybe with that, but Gaethje has more diversity in his striking, throwing straight punches, throwing hooks, throwing calf kicks, throwing leg kicks, mixing things up to the body, to the head. I think, McGregor does that somewhat, but you're just watching out for that left hand with him. Like that's the one punch that's going to get you, that's going to put you away. I think with Gaethje, there's a little bit more to his style to deal with. And like you said, with the wrestling incorporated, I know he doesn't use it offensively much, but defensively, it's going to be tough to try to wrestle with a guy like Gaethje. So I think that makes his striking even more dangerous in fights.
So as we're wrapping the show up here, you got a fight booked against Ricky Simón. I know you wanted this fight. We've been talking about this for a while. You guys were supposed to fight earlier this year before Ray Rodriguez stepped in. That was back in, what was that? That was in September.
Yeah.
So you must be excited to get this rebooked because, like I said, a long time coming. January 16th is the fight. Any particular reason it's that late, or I guess is that when Simón was available?
Oh, I don't know. It's too far away from me, James. You know me. I want to get in there quick, stay active. I'm still hoping for something short notice to come up, just in case. I'm staying ready for November, December. I know times like these, you never know. But I don't know why. I think it had more or less to do with they had a lot of guys left to offer fights to. They've already given me 4 this year. I don't know about Simon or what was going on with him because he was verbally agreeing with me to fight in November on November 7th card. So I don't know why the UFC pushed it back, but I think it had to do with a lot of other guys where, they had more guys to offer fights before us, and they were kind of putting us a little bit later just in case. But hey, I'm staying ready. I know they'll let me step up and fight at 45 on short notice. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you've been the 45 king lately, getting those short notice fights up a weight class. So it seems to be working out well for you. Yeah, it would be great to see you get one more in this year, just to cap off the year. And that would be because you fought what 1, 2, 3,
break
4.
Records,
yeah, you've already fought 4 times this year. I forgot about that. So there you go. The Donald Cowboy Cerrone of Bantamweight Brian Kelleher. Okay, so as I told Brian, this is how I convinced Brian to come on here. I told him we talk some hockey at the end. We are a hockey network. We have Real Kipper at noon. Nick Kiprios, who does an awesome job with that. Have you been following free agency? It's been a crazy summer. As a Canucks fan, it's been very disappointing. But with the cap, it's making things interesting. With COVID, it's making things interesting because it doesn't look like a lot of teams want to do like a lot of buyouts or spend to the top here. And the cap is flat. So I don't even know what the Islanders have been doing. Grice signed with someone else, right? Did he not? Your goaltender?
Yeah, I think Grice is gone. I don't know where he went exactly, but Grice is gone. I know they have like a Russian guy that's coming up that's supposed to be a good prospect that might come in as well. I don't know if they signed him yet or what. Varlamov has been a good goaltender though for us too. So I'm happy that he's still there. I know they got rid of Taze, who's like a really good sharpshooter on defense. He has a solid shot.
Colorado.
Yeah, went to Colorado. They picked up someone from Colorado. I don't know much about that guy. Do you know? I don't know.
I don't. I think it was more like a prospect for prospect type thing. I think because they wanted to get a little bit better there. But I think the Islanders are still going to make some moves here because as far as I know, they were pretty quiet overall in free agency, and I think they're going to want to beef things up. But they did have a good run last year. I mean, that was fun to watch. That Barzal, man, I'm big on that guy. He's from my neck of the woods, so it was cool to see him.
I hope they keep him around. I don't know what's going on with Barzal. Is he free agent? Or are they still
no? I think they're still working on an extension, but I think if I'm not mistaken, I think he's an RFA, meaning they have his rights. So yeah, I think he'll be sticking around. They're not going to let him go. But no, I'm
hope
excited
so.
for that. And by the way, Grice went to Detroit. That's where he ended up signing.
Detroit,
So,
okay.
yeah, not a big loss for you guys. 34 years old, getting up there in age in terms of his career. But Varlamov, like you said, quite the talent as well. Was it weird watching hockey like during the summertime? I actually didn't mind it. It was kind of nice. Like, now I could wear my shorts, and we had like a backyard barbecue and we're watching the playoffs. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it was cool because like I'm always watching MMA, and it was like a nice break from MMA. I was like, oh, we got hockey now. This is different, But and I think it's kind of cool too because now we don't have too long of a break till it starts back up again. So that made it
they're
nice
saying
as well.
January,
But yeah, I was
maybe.
excited. January,
Yeah,
right?
last
So
time
I'm excited for that.
I was going to say, Brian and I, last time we did an interview, he wore his Islanders jersey. You actually go to the games. Like, this isn't just like Brian being like a casual fan to like, entice me as a Canadian, but in general, he's actually a big fan. I've been watching it for a while. So it's been cool to see that as well. Boom. This was so much fun. You always do a great job on this. I really want to thank you for joining us here on the program. Anyone you want to thank, any sponsors, any social media you want to plug, I'll get you give you the floor here.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it. It's always a fun time doing the rounds with the media, breaking down the fights. I love doing that. So thank you. Thanks to my management, Sucker Punch Entertainment. We're working on some new sponsorships. Of course, we got the Turp House. Shout out to those guys for the CBD. We got social media, Brian Boom 135 on Instagram and Twitter. Follow me there. Check out the Boom breakdowns.
Guys, before we go, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. We're growing as fast as we can. It's been a great experience so far getting to do this, all the content here over on Line Movement. We do the show every week, Octagon Outlook, 1:15 p.m. Eastern time. You don't want to miss it. And just interviewed Neil Magny last week. Really great interview talking about the whole Hamzat Chimaev. If that fight's going to happen or not, Neil cleared all that up for us, says basically there's no contract right now, but he has verbally agreed to fight him. So make sure you tune into that. As always, check out your bets, blitzbet.eu. I'm James Lynch. I'll see you guys next week. Enjoy the card this Saturday. It's going to be great. UFC 254. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys a week from today, recapping UFC 254 and previewing the Uriah Hall and Anderson Silva card. Thanks so much for watching.
Business.